Good morning. I'm Madison Allworth with YTV. We are joined here today by Pooja Salhotra to talk about education in the upcoming mayoral race. Pooja, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I want to start off with the two platforms with the candidates in terms of education. Can you talk about those two positions?
So both of the candidates have talked a lot about education reform in their campaigns. And Elliker has three main points in his platform. The first one is expanding opportunities for early education, which he says is really important in increasing the graduation rates from high school and also reducing the achievement gap. And a second thing he talks about is transparent policy making, which just means that the people outside of the Board of Education should have a better idea of what's going on the board. And the third one is character development, which is kind of like personal development. So he talks about things like grit and hard work, perseverance. He wants that to be something that is taught in the classroom. Harp has a somewhat similar campaign in that she also supports expanding primary education opportunities. But in addition to that, she supports adult education, which is not something that Elliker talks about that much. And another thing that she talks about is giving kids who are in high school more opportunities that are like their real lives. So something along the lines of vocational training and career-based training.
Great. So another thing that's been brought up is why exactly education reform is so important now in New Haven. Could you expand on that?
Sure. So basically we're in the third year right now of an education reform initiative that was started by Mayor DeStefano in 2009. And so since we're right in the midst of that and we've seen some improvements in terms of improvements in high school graduation rates and increasing the third grade reading levels, it's important to continue those efforts. So the candidates are kind of jumping right into the middle of a reform movement that's already started. So as one person who I interviewed from ConCan, which is a education nonprofit, she kind of said that the mayoral candidates basically have the power to determine whether that education reform initiative is going to keep going or whether it's just going to kind of fade away.
Okay, so then how do the two candidates differ on how they would approach education reform?
So as I said earlier, they do have some similarities in terms of their support of early access to education, but I think what really sets them apart is that Toni Harp talks a lot about adult education. So she says that, kids might drop out of high school for various reasons, but they deserve a second chance. And so there needs to be a lot of funding going towards adult education in New Haven. Justin Elliker has not really talked that much about that. So that's one difference. Another difference is that Justin Elliker does talk about character education, which when I talked to Toni Harp, she said that she wasn't even sure what that meant. And she said that she doesn't really see why that needs to be a focus. Whereas Justin Elliker says, he's talked to parents who say that they want schools to focus more on things like hard work and perseverance because those are the things that really matter.
Okay, so another big change that might be coming to the school education system here in New Haven is this hybrid school board initiative that might be passed. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly that means and what that would mean for the new mayor?
Sure. So the hybrid board of education is something that's on the ballot. So voters, when they go to the polls on November 5th, will have the opportunity to choose whether or not they want to vote for the hybrid board of education. And right now, what the system is like is the mayor appoints 7 other people to serve on the Board of Education, and then he also sits on the Board of Education. But with the hybrid board, what would happen is 4 members would be appointed by the mayor, and 2 would be elected by the public, and then you would also see 2 student members who would not get to vote, but who would get to voice their opinions. So basically, it allows for more transparency in the sense that people outside of the Board of Education will have a voice, people outside of politics, people from the public will be able to voice their opinions. And Justin Elliker has really supported this a lot. In fact, he has some sort of promotional video for it explaining all the positive aspects of it, how it will positively influence New Haven. Toni Harp, in my interview with her, she did support it, but she didn't really seem too enthusiastic about it.
Okay, and on a final note, I just want to talk about the experience of these two candidates. In what ways will their experience allow them to implement their proposed changes in terms of education and education reform?
So I think that both the candidates are coming to the table with a lot of different experiences. Toni Harp she's been on the state senate for 20 years. She's a lot older than Justin Elicker, so she clearly just has more experience in that sense. And serving on the state board, she did really focus on education issues, and she's dealt with the state budget, so in that sense she might have more of an ability to make the education budget more efficient and reallocate resources. What Justin Elicker has that I think Toni Harp does not is more of a city level experience, because he's been on the Board of Aldermen for a long time, so he knows more of the issues specifically related to the city. I think he's interacted more with city residents, talked to parents, teachers, students, so he knows exactly what the issues are in New Haven, whereas Toni Harp has more of a broad-based knowledge about the issues facing urban education districts.
Thank you so much, Pooja.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for watching. This has been Madison Allworth with YTV.